Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. Time for this week's edition of Longhorn Weekly, and this one's brought to you by Allegiant Digital Marketing. We'll tell you more about Allegiant Digital Marketing later in the show. CJ, Sark and company coming off a big recruiting weekend. 3 verbal commitments from the first official visit weekend of June. We've got Jake Collette, a kicker, Dylan Berryman, an interior defensive lineman, and then Cohen Brown at wide receiver. Give me your letter grade for the weekend, CJ. You got to track it all. You saw guys at the airport as they were leaving. Give me a letter grade for the first OV weekend.
I think it's safe to say an A, right? You don't have many guys on campus in comparison to what's to come, June 13th and June 20th, but you come away with 3 commitments, right? And 2 of them, position guys, Dylan Berryman on the defensive line, Cohen Brown at wide receiver, I'm big fans of. I loved what I saw from Dylan Berryman in person. I know we've talked about it, but the photo of him standing in front of a Jeep Grand Wagoneer, Jeff, he dwarfs the truck. It's impressive, right? So I like Dylan Berryman. I've seen Cohen Brown several times in person, dating back to when he was a sophomore in high school at Waxahachie, and he's improved day in, day out. 10.69 speed in the 100. Already has a frame that looks like he's been in college for a few years. He's got that Matthew Golden build. Now, will he be able to perform like that on the field? That's a tall task, but I think he's got the tools to do just that. And, of course, you add another tally to the specialist count. You get Jake Collette out of Ringgold, Georgia. Anytime you come away with an official visit weekend with 3 commits before they leave the city, I think you've done something right. On top of that, you made big moves for Lamar Brown, getting him on campus. Love talking to Malachi Lee about his visit as well. And, of course, Xavier Crowell getting on campus before that trip to Auburn and Alabama. We'll see what develops there. But overall, I think very positive steps all in all. And positive notes again, Hayward Howard, Dylan Berryman, 2 commits from Louisiana, going to be back on campus June 20th as that June 20th official visit weekend. More commitment-centric, going to start building out what you would call the family of this class.
Yeah, those who were following, and I don't know why you weren't, you should have been, but should have been following the thread we had over on ontexasfootball.com. You and Jerry Hamilton, you guys were all over it on Sunday. And a couple things that I found interesting from just the nuggets that you guys picked up. Jerry said he felt like it was a Michigan-Texas battle for Malachi Lee, which is interesting because we've talked about it, CJ, maybe taking that Brandon Baker route where it's Michigan or the SEC, and maybe Texas has the lead for Malachi Lee over the other 2 SEC schools, Alabama and Georgia, in that recruitment. Making up progress with Corey Wells, who's done taking official visits at this point, the big defensive lineman out of the state of Mississippi. It's going to be another big weekend for interior defensive linemen, and we'll talk about the upcoming visit weekend here in just a minute. But you look at the recruitments of those 2 guys specifically, CJ, and on top of that, with Lamar Brown, it seemed like Texas, it was a smaller crowd than what they're going to get this weekend. But, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jamarian Carlton from Temple, the edge defender. It seemed like if guys didn't commit to Texas over the weekend, the staff made up a lot of ground with guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the benefit of kind of this smaller start to the June official visit month for the Texas staff. But for a guy like Jamarian Carlton, you didn't quite know where Texas was sitting in this race, right? They were the last school he scheduled an official visit with, bumped another school out of place for Texas. And now with 2 trips from Alan Clark in the spring, followed up with this Texas official visit. Texas is surging right now in that recruitment. I think that's a positive sign. The top defensive lineman in the state of Texas, edge rusher, but you get the point. And then Lamar Brown, I know, look, it's kind of been, where's Texas in this? There's the offensive line at first, switched over to defensive line. Alan Clark, that Baton Rouge connection, it's paying dividends here because there would not have been a 5-star Lamar Brown on campus without the efforts of Alan Clark in that one. And real quick on Corey Wells, the defensive lineman out of Mississippi, he was pretty giddy talking about his time in Texas. And I don't use that word freely to describe, the sentiment I get from recruits when it comes to recapping visits. Of course, everybody's going to tell you it's a good visit, but, you see his ears kind of perk up at the sign of, what'd you like about Texas? And you get a big smile and you say everything. Well, talking to him a little bit more, it certainly feels like Texas is right there for him. This is his final visit for the month of June. I know we're talking about the first visit weekend for Texas. Final visit weekend for Corey Wells. It would not surprise me one bit to see a decision coming very soon.
CJ, let's look ahead to this weekend. Wide receiver might be the featured position this weekend with Jalen Lott, the Texas legacy out of Panther Creek and Frisco. Texas now recruiting him as a wide receiver. You got Jabari Mack coming in from Destrehan in the Metro New Orleans area. Mason James scheduled to come in from Norman North. I think the secondary, CJ, is really interesting. Travis Stevenson from Quitman, Georgia, was supposed to be in this last weekend. He's now coming in this coming weekend. Samari Matthews, who, in my opinion, is about as important a recruit as Texas has left on the board, especially after Justice Fitzpatrick went ahead and committed to Georgia. What's top of mind for you, CJ? Like I said, wide receiver, secondaries in there, obviously bringing in more line of scrimmage talent, but what's top of mind for you as you look ahead to this coming visit weekend?
Yeah, of course, Texas adding Cohen Brown, I think, changes a little bit of the dynamic for the wide receiver position moving forward. And it might be just as easy as the window's closing if you're a Jalen Lott or if you're a Jabari Mack. I know that you're committed to LSU, but look, if you want to be a part of this Texas class, and again, side note here, for whatever reason, LSU is just incapable of holding on to wide receiver commits. It's pretty remarkable. So we'll see, of course, how much more of a priority it turns to Jabari Mack retaining in that LSU class. But for Texas, if Jalen Lott's your 1 and Caden Finley's your 1B, how hard do you push for a Jabari? Or how hard do you push for a Mason James out of Oklahoma? You don't often see Oklahoma high school prospects end up at Texas, but the point being, you have Chris Stewart from Shadow Creek. You now have Cohen Brown from Waxahachie. Things are getting a little tighter in that wide receiver fold, but Jeff, I'm absolutely with you on Samari Matthews. And if that visit goes well this weekend, it would not surprise me one bit considering what we know from the spring and his 4-day visit down to Austin earlier this spring. If that goes well, Texas should be seen as the undisputed leader in my eyes.
I'm going to call this and I know the other week, the following weekend can be considered too. I'm going to call this the on the hoof weekend because you got some visitors that just getting off the bus. They're some of those guys you want first. Jalen Lott is one of those guys. Hezzy Kent, the big tight end out of Georgia. Felix Ojo coming in. Felix Ojo fits that bill between Vodney Cleveland, Bryce Perry Wright, Jarrell McCoy on the defensive line. One of my favorite prospects, CJ, that I've seen in this class, just from the guys that we've seen on campus throughout the unofficial visit weekends, Dre Quinn, a kid out of Georgia, just transferred to Buford, Georgia from Greater Atlanta Christian. Dre Quinn's going to be in this weekend. He's a good-looking prospect. Xavier Griffin, Braden Rouse, maybe your top 2 linebacker targets left on the board, at least 2 of them, both from the state of Georgia. And then Chase Calicut from North Shore, who's been – seems like Texas has been on him. I don't know, it feels like years now that Texas has been involved in that recruitment. But, CJ, just a lot of high-level prospects coming to Texas this weekend. If you just want to know the type of athlete, the type of prospect Sark and company are recruiting – just go hang out in front of Moncrief and just watch these guys, get off the bus or the shuttle or the car, wherever from their official visit, getting to Moncrief. It's going to be an impressive group in Austin this weekend.
You call it the on the hoof weekend, Jeff. I'd probably call it just the peach week. They got 8 guys coming in from the state of Georgia. So you talk about the impressive physicality of the guys getting off the bus. I mean, a lot of that stems from recruiting Georgia, recruiting Mississippi, Florida, that deep south. I talk about Louisiana with Jabari Mack, but hey, you're in the heart of SEC country with Hezzy Kent coming in. Again, Travis Stevenson coming in, Kamari Brooks. You talk about the linebackers in this class. Really impressive group. And again, I'm with you. I really do think Braden Rouse, Xavier Griffin, you look at that linebacking combination potentially, that's what you build front sevens on that win national championships. That's what's put Alabama and Georgia in that different category over the few years. Texas, USC in that hunt are really pushing for Xavier Griffin. I'd be pretty surprised if that official visit was anything less than the true red carpet rolled out for him.
100%. We'll keep track of it here on the channel and over at ontexasfootball.com. Before we do anything else, though, on this edition of Longhorn Weekly, got to let you know about our sponsor for this week's show. It's Allegiant Digital Marketing. Are you a business owner who struggles with any of the following? Finding new customers, getting consistent leads, finding marketing services to promote your business that actually work? Allegiant Digital Marketing might be for you. It's an Austin-based advertising agency, and the founder and CEO, Chad Markham, he's helped thousands of business owners just like you for over 25 years conquer those same challenges. So if you're ready to start making money in your business and grow with confidence, visit allegiantdigital.com ontexasfootball and get a free marketing plan. Plus, you can save up to $2,500 in advertising with their Hook 'em Horns special today. So again, that's allegiantdigital.com/ontexasfootball for your free marketing plan. And we want to thank Chad Markham and Allegiant Digital Marketing for sponsoring this edition of Longhorn Weekly. CJ, the athletic year has wrapped up, and Texas winning a softball national championship on top of a women's basketball Final Four, volleyball and Jarrett Elliott. They're not slowing down anytime soon. The football team in the college football playoff semifinal for the second year. Even the one sport that maybe didn't hold up their end of the deal was men's basketball. Now you've made a coaching change, and the hire of Sean Miller's got everybody excited. CJ, I know you weren't able to relish and enjoy the run Texas had in the 2000s, where every sport on campus is competing for a national championship. But congratulations, CJ. Now you've got it again, because Texas, under Chris Del Conte's leadership and the administration of Texas, every sport on campus pretty much competed for a national championship this last season, and that's the expectation going into the 25-26 athletic year.
Yeah, even if it wasn't the national championship, it was an SEC title, right? You talked about men's baseball and kind of the disappointing end there, but hey, you added a number to the wall with the SEC regular season title. Men's basketball, several rounds deep in the SEC tournament, maybe the weak link, as you mentioned, in terms of the calendar year, but bright future. And we've talked about it, the tallest roster in Texas basketball history coming onto campus. Jerry's done a great job of kind of highlighting that on ontexasfootball.com. But Texas football, Final Four appearance. You look at women's basketball, Final Four appearance, softball, national championship. A down year for Texas volleyball, but hey, several rounds deep in the NCAA tournament. And that's even after multiple national championships. So everything right now feels like it's grooving. And credit to Chris Del Conte, credit to his staff, because you don't get that celebration at McCombs Field if not for the pieces, the resources set in place for these athletics departments in Texas right now. It certainly feels, if it's not golden era yet, Jeff, it certainly feels like it could be over the next year or two.
Yeah, it feels like we're in one of those right now. And I go back to something CDC said when he was hired. And if you go in the Hall of Fame, you go anywhere in that north end zone or Belmont Hall, wherever you're at on the 40 acres, you'll see the quote plastered up on the wall when CDC said, "A united Texas is a reckoning." You're seeing that 100% right now. And I really dig how the coaches support each other across all sports. I mean, I talked about it, that regional championship in baseball. Texas didn't beat UTSA, but you got Jarrett Elliott on the dugout while the baseball team's starting to rally, getting the crowd fired up. I mean, Vic Schaefer loves going to the football games, and he supports Sark. And we see Sark at men's and women's basketball games. And, we know Jim Schlossnagle and Sark working together with the Jonah Williams thing. We know they support each other. I mean, I don't know that there's, other than Vic Schaefer, I don't know that there's a bigger college football fan in the athletic department than Troy Tulowitzki. So all the programs, CJ, all the coaches are supporting each other. I know that might sound cliche or what have you, but man, that's just really cool to see, because we don't get that at a lot of places in the country. And trust me, there's been a lot of years where you haven't had that at Texas.
Yeah, even add Sean Miller to that. His doppelganger, as some have said, of Steve Sarkisian. I know that they've joked about it, but for him to be sitting front row at his introductory press conference, I think that means something, right? It's the support. It's what's the saying, Jeff? High tide lift all water, or something like that.
All lifts all boats. Yep.
The boats at Texas right now are the individual sports, and they're being uplifted amongst one another, and I think that's very important. It's cool too, because look, football is going to be what carries the load in an athletic year, right? Folks are going to care about what your football team does, but it helps every other sport. We talk about the recruits that visit for football home games. Well, it's basketball, it's women's basketball, it's softball, it's baseball. Recruits coming in to see a passionate, rowdy Texas fan base cheer on their team in Austin at DKR, saying, wow, this could be my life if I commit and play whatever sport I play at the University of Texas. It goes much further down the road than just a game of football. So I'm with you. And Texas has done a great job of encapsulating the city, the university, and now the SEC, as well as part of their recruiting pitches. It doesn't feel like Texas is going to slow down anytime soon, Jeff.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome right now. And I'll say, as somebody that, got to live through it and in the 2000s, Texas fans enjoy it because man, while it's here, don't take it for granted. It's a heck of a ride, and it should be a fun ride for the next few years. CJ, the ride Schloss and company are on right now in the transfer portal, that thing's going at a breakneck pace, but some interesting dynamics in baseball. And we're talking about a little bit before we started recording. You've got the draft, and you don't know how you're trying to add to your roster right now. You don't really know yet how. I mean, you've got an idea how the draft is going to impact your roster, but you don't really know for sure until you get through it. On top of the fact with the house settlement getting approved, and look, there's lawyers that have to do lawyering, so I think we're a long way away from this thing like just being firmed and this is what everybody's going off of. But what roster size are you working off of? Are you working off of 40? Are you working off of 34, which is what the new number is supposed to be? Are you working kind of somewhere in between to give yourself some flexibility? Either way, CJ, Texas has roster spots to fill in baseball. They hosted a couple, and if you're over at ontexasfootball.com, Blake Monroe had some Monday morning portal notes, kind of a recap of the weekend and a look ahead. Henry Ford and Eric Becker, two guys from that Virginia program. Brian O'Connor, obviously moving on, taking a Mississippi State job. As if the SEC wasn't tough enough, you get another national championship coach coming into the league to take over a program that's won a national championship in recent years. So, Mississippi State, don't expect them to stay in the middle of the SEC much longer. They've got a chance to shoot back up to the top. But Henry Ford, the outfielder, Eric Becker, the infielder, were both on campus over the weekend. There's still a chance they could go follow Brian O'Connor to Mississippi State or decide to do their own thing. One interesting visitor this week, CJ, Chris Akopian, the infielder from Maryland. Really, really good numbers for Maryland. Was a second-team All-Big Ten guy. It's maybe not going as fast as maybe some people think it should or expected it would or hoped it would, but there are some things that Schloss and company have to balance out, CJ. And in addition to, you're kind of doing the speed dating thing in the portal, which a guy may get to campus and then all sides or one side realizes, hey, maybe this isn't the fit we thought it would be. So it's not an easy process, but it's one that Schloss and company are going through right now.
It's always funny, when you get to the portal season at Texas, you just expect results immediately. And, preaching patience isn't fun on our side, and it's sure not fun to be lectured on patience, I'm sure, if you're a Texas fan. But that's what's going to end up being the case again. We see it year after year in football in terms of, well, player X, player Y, they just entered the portal. Why isn't Texas on them? Well, they probably have their guys somewhere down the road. And credit to Steve Sarkisian, but we know that the portal in football is figured out. I'm trusting Jim Schlossnagle this offseason, to do the same in baseball. So I'm looking at Chris Akopian as a true gem. If that's a guy that you add to your program and the lineup that is expected back in Austin in 2026, you've got yourself a really solid piece in the front end of your order, in my eyes. And of course, star infielder, you mentioned it, second team All Big Ten at Maryland. You would also battle it out with Texas A&M. If you're able to win that recruitment, Jeff, well, not only are you sticking it to Texas A&M, but you're adding a really valuable piece. I'm really interested to see where they go with the arms, because I've heard a number of names behind the scenes, as you and as has Blake, but the arms are going to be what elevates Texas to that next level again, and make sure that you have enough depth to sustain or even push through an injury like we saw this year to Jared Spencer. Texas is interested right now in a number of big-time arms out of the portal. It's all about whether or not they make it to campus before you really get to see the ball move in there.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a guy in the portal this year like a Braden Montgomery when he went from Stanford to Texas A&M, or Tommy White when he went from NC State to LSU and helped them win a national championship. But that's okay for Texas, because above all else, and we talked about this when they added Josh Livingston, the Wichita State transfer. Well, is he a third baseman? Is he a first baseman? The answer is yes. Texas just needs depth, CJ. That's one thing Schloss mentioned before the start of last season. He talked about it throughout the year. That's why he said, hey, we've got to stay healthy, and our best players have to have really good seasons for us to get to really where the standard is for Texas baseball, and that's Omaha. Now, they won an SEC championship. They didn't get there, in part because some of their best players didn't have their best seasons, and they were battling injuries, especially down the stretch. We talked about it. Max Ballou was playing hurt. So was Adrian Rodriguez. So was Ethan Mendoza. Jonah Williams had the hamstring. So you had all those things working against you. They just need depth, period. They needed a corner infield, middle infield. If you lose Rylan Galvan, you'd like to maybe go get a veteran catcher out of the portal. and you need it in the outfield. So I just think it's more about CJ adding pieces rather than just getting honed in on that one big piece that may or may not be there. You just got to have pieces right now if you're Texas.
Yeah, if you're able to supplement what's coming in the high school ranks, in which Texas is a top 5 class in the high school ranks, you look at the top 10 arms in the state of Texas, and the majority of them have Longhorn commitment logos next to them. It's great. That's building the foundation for the future. You need some guys right now that can play immediately, but it's all about that depth. It's all about getting guys who have bright futures while also complementing them with guys who have immediate tomorrows on the field for the Longhorns. And that's where I see it right now. It's all promising and encouraging, and we got you covered on Texas football.
Yeah. One other thing I want to mention, CJ, because it's popped up since we started recording. Jerry Hamilton has some basketball notes over on ontexasfootball.com because men's basketball started workouts today. Louis Obiara, the 7'1", 19-year-old from the UK, he will not be with the team until August. Expected to be a developmental player anyway. But CJ, I don't think we've talked about it here on Longhorn Weekly, but goodness gracious, this is the tallest, longest Texas basketball team I've ever seen in my life. Even without Obiara, you've got Matas Wokatitis, who's a 7-footer, Lucina Traore at 6'10", Nick Cody at 6'9", John Clark 6'8.5", 6'9". Like I said, Obiara 7'1", Dalen Swain as a kind of combo wing at 6'8", Camden Heidi at 6'7". Just everybody that's wanted Texas to recruit size, CJ, and have some physicality to go bang in the SEC. Sean Miller built a roster to do exactly that.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. Now, the question is kind of more so on the smaller end, right? Do you have the guard, the point guard, the facilitator that's going to allow this roster to reach its potential? I know that was a bit of the frustration a year ago. Do you have it right now? Because you only have one guy, looking back at some 2024, 25 stats, that averaged more than 2 assists per game, and that was Dalen Swain, a 6'8" forward that you're kind of expecting not to be a primary ball handler. So I don't question that this team will have the depth, the size. Do they have the guard creativeness up front to start the roster or to start the offense? As we've talked about it, point guard, very important in the Sean Miller offense. We've talked about a number of guys that have gone pro from Arizona that have made a lot of money in the NBA playing that guard position. Does Texas have that right now, or does it matter? Do you trust the development of a Sean Miller in his offense to say, hey, here are the keys, here are the reads. Now it's your offense. Go do with it as you please. But I really like the scoring ability of this team. And maybe that's just what it is, pure scoring at the end of games with the plays, the offensive philosophy of Sean Miller that takes this team to the next level, because we all know that was, gravely lacking last year in terms of clutch time, play calling, sets, whatever you want to say on the offense side of the ball.
Along with Dalen Swain, his development, I think what you're talking about, I think it comes down to 3 things. I think one is Tremont Mark's health, which as we found out later in the year, that was going to be a big part of what Rodney Terry Company had planned, was how they were going to use Tremont Mark, and didn't really get to do it the way they envisioned until the end of the year. So I think Tremont Mark's health is a big factor. I think Jordan Pope's role, just getting the right role for him, because, playing on the ball, being a true point guard, I don't think really fit his skill set well. And it didn't really fit last year. So I think that if the fit is better, then you'll get a more productive, more consistent year out of Jordan Pope. And I think Simeon Wilcher, CJ, is just confidence. Look, when you've got a coach like Rick Pitino saying, I wish this guy would shoot more, like, the talent's there, the shooting form is there. Now the numbers aren't there, but if Simeon Wilcher's got confidence to let it rip, he can be a guy that can be, a double-digit per game scorer. So all that said, I think it's kind of those 3 things working together. But if nothing else, CJ, it's an intriguing roster for Sean Miller's first year. Whether it's good enough to win the SEC or get Texas the second weekend, that remains to be seen. But you've got a lot of veteran guards. You've got some young big men with really good projectables, and then maybe an NBA guy like Dalen Swain to tie it all together.
Hey, as long as there's paint protection and rebounding, anything else can fall into place as it may. But that's been something that I've not seen at Texas in quite a while. That's encouraging. And again, the guys that you mentioned up top, there's enough talent there that will at least raise the level of this Texas floor on the basketball side of things. So it's exciting. It's intriguing. I'm not ready to go out there and say that this is a second weekend team. Not yet, not for me. But it's certainly encouraging, and I think it's deeper than what we've seen in the past.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Longhorn Weekly. CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for making it happen, and the entire On Texas Football staff. Make sure you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. Go ahead and like this video below. Also, get over to ontexasfootball.com, where right now, if you sign up using the promo code OTFOG, that'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. You do not want to miss anything in the month of June. You already missed one weekend. Don't miss any more. 2 massive visit weekends for Sark and Company. Plus, we got baseball. We're talking basketball. We're talking softball coming off of a national championship. Anything Longhorn related, if it's going down on the 40 acres, we're talking about it over at ontexasfootball.com. And again, the promo code is OTFOG for $39.95 for 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com. And a big thank you to Allegiant Digital Marketing for sponsoring this edition of Longhorn Weekly. For CJ Vogel, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, welcome.